The courtroom was dead silent as my ex-husband's new wife, Jessica, smirked at me from across the room. She had just made her demand, half of my inheritance. The judge adjusted his glasses, looking over the papers, while my lawyer, Mr. Reynolds, leaned back in his chair with a cold smile. "Your Honor," Jessica's lawyer began, "my client has a right to a portion of the inheritance as it was acquired during the marriage." I clenched my fists under the table. How dare she? My father had passed away just 6 months ago, leaving me everything: the house, the savings, the family heirlooms. And now, Jessica, the woman who had stolen my husband, wanted to take half of it. The judge turned to Mr. Reynolds. "Counselor, what's your response?" Mr. Reynolds didn't even blink. "Your Honor, my client's ex-husband waived all rights to her assets in the divorce settlement. And as for his new wife," he paused, pulling out a single sheet of paper, "she has no legal standing. But even more interesting, we have proof of fraud." Jessica's face went pale. The judge took the paper, his eyebrows rising as he read. The room felt like it was spinning. What had my lawyer just uncovered? But let me back up. This didn't start in a courtroom. It started with betrayal. 3 years ago, I thought I had the perfect life. Married to David for 10 years, a cozy home in the suburbs, and dreams of starting a family. But then Jessica happened. She was David's coworker. Young, flashy, and very interested in my husband. At first, I ignored the signs. The late nights at work, the sudden business trips, the way David's phone was always face down. But one day, I came home early and found them together in our bed. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just turned around, called a lawyer, and filed for divorce. David begged for another chance, but I was done. The divorce was quick. He got his car and some savings, but I kept the house and my dignity. Or so I thought. A year later, David married Jessica. I moved on, focusing on my career and healing. Then, my father passed away unexpectedly. He left me everything: his house, his life savings, even his beloved vintage car collection. It was bittersweet, but it gave me security. Or so I thought. One morning, I got a letter in the mail. A legal notice. Jessica was suing me for half of my inheritance, claiming it was marital property since David and I were still technically married when my father died. I laughed at first. Then I read it again. Then I called Mr. Reynolds. "Don't worry," he said. "This is a desperate move. But we're going to bury them." And that's how we ended up in court. Back in the courtroom, Jessica was sweating. The judge handed the paper back to Mr. Reynolds and turned to her lawyer. "Counsel, are you aware that your client falsified documents to support this claim?" Jessica's lawyer stammered. "Your Honor, I had no knowledge of this." Mr. Reynolds smirked. "We have bank records proving Jessica forged signatures to make it seem like my client's father added David to his will. But the truth? He never did." Jessica shot up from her seat. "That's a lie." The judge slammed his gavel. "Sit down, Mrs. Thompson." The room erupted. David looked like he wanted to disappear. And me? I sat there, stunned. But it wasn't over. Because as Jessica sat back down, she whispered something to her lawyer. And that's when things got even worse. Her lawyer stood up, his voice shaking. "Your Honor, we have another motion." Mr. Reynolds narrowed his eyes. "What now?" The lawyer took a deep breath. "We're filing for a restraining order." "Against me." The words hit me like a punch to the gut. "A restraining order? Against me?" Jessica's lawyer continued, his voice slick with false concern. "Your Honor, my client has reason to believe Miss Carter has been harassing her. There have been threatening messages, unwanted visits." "That's bullshit." The words burst out of me before I could stop them. The judge banged his gavel. "Miss Carter, control yourself." Mr. Reynolds placed a calming hand on my arm. "Your Honor, this is a clear attempt to intimidate my client. There is no evidence of harassment because it never happened." Jessica folded her arms, a smug smile playing on her lips. She knew she was lying. She knew this was just another game. But then her lawyer pulled out his phone. "We have proof." My stomach dropped. Let me rewind a little. After the divorce, I never contacted David or Jessica. Not once. I blocked them on everything: social media, phone, email. I wanted nothing to do with them. But Jessica? She couldn't let go. First, it was little things. She'd accidentally like old photos of me and David on Facebook. Then, she started showing up at places she knew I'd be: my favorite coffee shop, the gym, even my dad's funeral. Each time, she'd give me this fake, pitying smile. "Oh, I'm so sorry for your loss. David sends his condolences." I ignored her. Every single time. Then the legal notice came. And now this. Back in court, Jessica's lawyer played a voicemail. A woman's voice, sounding just like me, hissed, "You'll regret this, Jessica. You think you can take what's mine? I'll ruin you." The room went dead silent. I knew that wasn't me. I knew it was fake. But the way everyone looked at me, like I was some kind of psycho, made my blood boil. Mr. Reynolds didn't flinch. "Your Honor, that is not my client's voice. We request a voice analysis." The judge nodded. "Granted. This hearing is adjourned until we have the results." As we walked out of the courtroom, Jessica brushed past me, whispering, "You should have just given me what I wanted." I turned to Mr. Reynolds, my hand shaking. "What now?" He gave me a grim smile. "Now? We fight back." 2 days later, I got a call from Mr. Reynolds. His voice was tight with anger. "They're not just after your inheritance. Jessica's been digging into your father's estate, looking for anything she can use against you." I felt sick. "What does that mean?" "It means," he said slowly, "this isn't just about money. She's trying to destroy you." That's when I realized I wasn't just fighting for my inheritance anymore. I was fighting for my life. And then the unthinkable happened. I came home to find my front door wide open. And inside, waiting for me, was Jessica, with a gun. My breath caught in my throat as I stared down the barrel of the gun. Jessica's hand was steady, her eyes cold. "You should have just walked away," she said, her voice eerily calm. Every muscle in my body screamed at me to run, but I forced myself to stay still. One wrong move, and she might pull the trigger. "Jessica," I said slowly, keeping my voice even, "this isn't going to solve anything." She let out a sharp laugh. "Oh, I think it will." The gun didn't waver. My mind raced. How had she gotten in? Why was she doing this? And most importantly, how the hell was I going to get out alive? Then, behind her, I saw it. My father's old baseball bat, leaning against the hallway closet. If I could just reach it. Let me back up. After the court hearing, I thought things couldn't get worse. I was wrong. The fake voicemail was bad enough, but then Jessica started spreading rumors. She told people I was unstable, that I had been stalking her. Suddenly, old friends stopped answering my calls. My neighbors looked at me differently. Even my boss pulled me aside to ask if I was doing okay. I was being painted as the crazy ex-wife, and Jessica was holding the brush. Mr. Reynolds warned me. "She's playing dirty. You need to be careful." I was careful. I changed my locks. I installed security cameras. I even started carrying pepper spray. But none of that mattered when I walked into my own house and found her waiting. Back in the hallway, Jessica took a step closer. The gun was inches from my face now. "Sign over the inheritance," she demanded. "All of it, or I pull the trigger." My pulse pounded in my ears. There was no way I was giving her a damn thing. But I also wasn't ready to die. I needed to buy time. "Okay," I said, holding up my hands. "Okay, I'll sign. Just put the gun down." Jessica smirked. "Nice try." She reached into her pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. "This is a transfer agreement. Sign it. Now." I glanced at the bat again. If I could just distract her for a second, then a knock at the door. Jessica's head snapped toward the sound. That was my chance. I lunged for the bat. What happened next was a blur. Jessica screamed. The gun went off, bang, the bullet embedding itself in the wall. I swung the bat hard, hitting her arm. The gun clattered to the floor. She scrambled for it, but I kicked it away, then raised the bat again. Get out of my house. For the first time, Jessica looked scared. Then the door burst open. It was the police. And standing behind them, David. His face was pale as he looked between me, Jessica, and the gun on the floor. What the hell is going on? The next few hours were a nightmare. The police separated us, took statements, examined the security footage. Jessica tried to lie, saying I had threatened her, but the cameras didn't lie. They saw her break in. They saw the gun. She was arrested on the spot. David stood there, shell-shocked, as they led her away in handcuffs. Then he turned to me, his voice barely above a whisper. I didn't know she would do this. I didn't answer. I didn't care. But as the cops finished up, one of them pulled me aside. Ma'am, you might want to sit down for this. He handed me a file. Inside were bank records. And what they revealed changed everything. Jessica hadn't just wanted my inheritance. She had been stealing from David, too. And the person helping her was his own brother. I stared at the bank records in disbelief. Page after page of transactions. Large sums of money moved from David's accounts into an offshore one. And the name listed as the recipient? Michael Thompson, David's brother. The officer shifted uncomfortably. We've been investigating Jessica for wire fraud. She's been siphoning money for months, and your ex's brother was helping her cover it up. My hands trembled as I flipped through the documents. It all made sense now. Jessica didn't just want my inheritance, she was desperate for cash. And David? He had no idea. I looked up just in time to see David reading his own copy of the file, his face twisting in horror. This can't be real. The officer sighed. We've got evidence. Your brother's been arrested. David's knees buckled. He collapsed into a chair, running his hands through his hair. Oh my God. I should have felt satisfaction watching him realize how badly he'd been played. But all I felt was pity. Then, the officer dropped the final bomb. Jessica wasn't working alone. She had a partner, someone else helping her pressure you. I froze. Who? He hesitated. Your ex-husband's lawyer. After the restraining order stunt, Mr. Reynolds had warned me things might escalate. People like Jessica don't give up, he said. And if she's willing to forge evidence, she's willing to do worse. I had scoffed. What's worse than trying to frame me for harassment? He gave me a grim look. Be careful. Now, I understood. Jessica wasn't just greedy. She was cornered. And cornered animals are the most dangerous. David's lawyer, the same one who had represented him in our divorce, had been feeding Jessica information. My schedule. My dad's will. Even the security system codes to my house. It was all a setup. And now the police had proof. David looked like he was going to be sick. I trusted him. I paid him. The officer nodded. He's in custody too. I sank into a chair, my head spinning. This wasn't just about money anymore. This was about revenge. And Jessica had just lost. But then my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. You think this is over? You have no idea what's coming. My blood ran cold. Jessica was in custody. So who the hell sent that? My fingers tightened around the phone as I stared at the message. The police were still milling around my house, taking photos of the broken door and the bullet lodged in the wall. But this felt like a new kind of violation. I showed the text to the officer. His expression darkened. We'll trace the number, but it's probably a burner phone. David, still pale and shaken, stepped closer. Let me see. I hesitated before handing him the phone. His eyes scanned the message, then flicked to mine. This isn't Jessica. No shit, I snapped. She's in handcuffs. I mean, he swallowed hard. This is someone else. Someone who's been helping her. A cold dread settled in my stomach. The officer took notes. We'll put extra patrols on your street tonight. In the meantime, my phone buzzed again. Another message. A photo this time. Of me. Taken through my bedroom window. Last night. After the court hearing, I'd been paranoid. Rightfully so. I checked the locks twice before bed, made sure the security system was armed. But I hadn't thought to check outside. Hadn't noticed the shadowy figure lurking near the trees. Hadn't realized someone was watching me. The officer cursed under his breath. We need to get you somewhere safe. David ran a hand over his face. She has a place. My cabin upstate. It's under my name, not yours. No one would think to look for you there. I wanted to refuse. The idea of owing David anything made my skin crawl. But the alternative was staying here, where they knew where I was. 2 hours later, I was packed and in my car, following David's directions to the cabin. Mr. Reynolds had been furious when I told him, "You can't just disappear. We have a court date. I'll be back before then. I promised. I just need to breathe." He sighed. "Fine. But check in every day." The drive was long, the roads winding through dense forest. No streetlights. No cell service in some spots. The perfect place to vanish. Or to be vanished. When I finally pulled up to the cabin, it was nearly midnight. The place was small but sturdy, tucked back in the trees. David had given me the code to the lockbox. I grabbed my bag and stepped inside. The air was stale, the furniture covered in sheets. But it was safe. Or so I thought. Until I saw the envelope on the kitchen table. With my name on it. Inside was a single key. And a note. "You didn't really think it was just about the money, did you?" The key felt cold in my palm. Heavy. Important. I turned it over, searching for any markings, any clue, but there was nothing. Just a plain silver key. The note taunted me. "You didn't really think it was just about the money, did you?" No, I didn't. Not anymore. Because this wasn't about greed. This was about revenge. And I was finally ready to fight back. I called the only person I still trusted. Mr. Reynolds answered on the first ring. "Where are you?" "The police have been." "Listen." I cut him off. "Jessica wasn't working alone. There's someone else. And they left me a key." A pause. Then, slowly. "What kind of key?" "I don't know. But I think I'm supposed to find out." "No," his voice turned sharp. "That's exactly what they want. Stay where you are. I'm sending." It's too late. Because outside, headlights cut through the darkness. A car had just pulled up. The door burst open before I could react. And there, standing in the doorway, was someone I never expected. David's mother. She looked older than I remembered, her face lined with exhaustion and fury. "You ruined everything," she hissed. I stumbled back. "What?" "My sons. My family. You turned them against each other." The pieces clicked together. She was the one who sent the text. She was the one who took the photo. And now? She was holding a gun. I should have been scared. But all I felt was anger. "You're wrong," I said, my voice steady. "You did this. Not me." She sneered. "Sign the papers. Give back what you stole." I laughed. "Or what? You'll shoot me?" Her finger twitched on the trigger. But before she could fire, the police swarmed in. Turns out, Mr. Reynolds had traced my call. And now? It was over. Jessica went to prison for fraud, attempted kidnapping, and assault. David's brother got 5 years for embezzlement. And David's mother? She got a life sentence. Turns out, she'd been behind everything, pulling strings, manipulating Jessica, even paying off the lawyer. All because she blamed me for breaking up her family. Pathetic. A month later, I got a letter. From David. "I'm sorry. For everything." I almost threw it away. But then I flipped to the second page. And saw the deed. to his cabin. You deserve a fresh start. I smiled. And for the first time in years, I finally felt free.